SM Tharman.
I wasn't intending to speak, and I just thought I'll make a very brief intervention. First, I would like to say, on behalf of the government, that we do believe that it is important to raise the wages of our lowest paid workers. We really believe this. We've achieved significant progress in the last 10 years and in the last 5 years, and we think we should go further. I would not, and I say this to everyone from all sides, I would not exaggerate the differences between the PWM model and the minimum wage model. The PWM model is a minimum wage plus, and it is a sectoral approach. And the sectoral approach actually has a lot to commend it because it allows you to set the minimum rung at a level that is not so low and not so high. Because if you have a single level, you'll have to decide where to pitch it. How to do it without having gaming is an issue that policymakers grapple with. Not such a complicated issue in practice, to be frank, and you have to watch what happens at the edges. But it's a very sensible approach. I would like to suggest that none of us have a monopoly over compassion. And I say this not to discredit anyone. And in particular, I really respect where Member Jamus Lim is coming from, intellectually, emotionally, and so on. But don't assume that, no one should assume that you have a monopoly over compassion. I've listened to speeches over the last few days amongst everyone. I must say some of my PAP colleagues really made an impression on me. Not just for the very forceful proposals they were making, often going beyond what the government is doing, but the force of their conviction and the emotional force of their conviction. So please don't assume, none of us should assume, I'm not directing this at anyone in particular, none of us should assume that we have a monopoly over compassion. Also, and here's a bit of advice, try to avoid strawman arguments, like saying that the government is only interested in efficiency and not equity. That's frankly laughable. By the way, I say straw man, should I say straw person? But women are made of straw, I think. So, well, let's stick to straw men. But try to avoid that manner of argument or painting everything in binary terms. It's usually not necessary to reply, but I say this as a piece of general advice. Raising the standard of living of the poor is a complicated matter. And I say this, by the way, as an economist, as someone who studies overseas experience very carefully, and who, together with my colleagues, is a practitioner. How do we do it without losing that wage earner's ability to have the pride of having a job and earning a wage? We do it through the progressive wage model, which has to be expanded. We do it through workfare. We do it through a range of other subsidies, whether it's KIFAS, the housing subsidies, and many other ways. And it's not a job that's done for good. We have to do more. And many of the speeches that we've heard in the last few days were about how we can do more in a way that really helps those we're trying to help. But we are frankly not very far away from each other in that objective. In fact, we seem to be quite convinced. I mean, there is a consensus, let me put it that way, that should be our objective. But just try to avoid strawman arguments and pretending that you have a monopoly of in compassion. And by the way, as a very small point, I've never heard economists cite a university as a source of research, be it a well-regarded or not very well-regarded university. Individuals do research, and maybe very credible research, but universities don't publish research. Thank you.
May I?
Dr. Jamus Lim.
Yes, so very quickly, I regret if it came across that I was suggesting that only I or the party or any individual has a monopoly over compassion. In fact, that was explicitly why I did cite cases where I felt that existing policy demonstrated oodles of compassion. I even cited other members who have, not from our party, that have also talked about compassion. So I actually believe, like Minister Tharman does, that we are, there is in fact quite a bit of daylight. There is not as much of a gap between the thinking of the two. Now, that said, I don't think that I was setting out a strawman argument in talking about an efficiency-equity trade-off. And the reason for this is because this is precisely a continuum. So I'm not suggesting that every policy that is currently in place is only geared toward efficiency. And likewise, I'm not suggesting that every policy that I have laid out in my speech and elsewhere is only geared toward equity. Rather, it is about a continuum. And I am arguing that we can move more in the direction of favoring equity over efficiency. And that was the entire point of the argument, not to create an artificial straw man.